Ohio State of Mind podcast, hosted by Josh Keeley and Chris Ryan.
Your number one stop for all Buckeye football news.
What's in the box?
A boat's a boat, but the mystery box could be anything. It could even be a boat.
This is such a crock of shit. Hoo-ah!
The Ohio State of Mind podcast. Turn it up.
And welcome back to another episode of the Ohio State of Mind podcast. As always, I am Chris. To my right is my hetero life mate, Josh. Josh, that quote in our intro from Al Pacino, can you tell me what movie that's from?
Scent of a Woman, bro.
Scent of a Woman. Can you tell me the co-star of that movie?
Oh, shit. No.
He played Robin.
Dude, I don't. Oh, man, it's gonna bother me now. Hold on. Well, I mean, that doesn't make for good radio. So just tell me.
It's a very young Chris O'Donnell.
Chris O'Donnell? Shut
Very young Chris O'Donnell.
I would never get that. I would have gotten Philip Seymour Hoffman before I got him.
I believe that, but there are plenty of other hilarious quotes in that movie, but they probably wouldn't make. Probably get this video struck down, honestly. But it's been a week. We talked some Buckeye news last week. Yeah, we talked about and discussed, broke down the 2020 class. This week we're gonna get a little bit of Buckeye news, and then we're gonna run through the 2019 class. Josh, recap of your last week. Anything noteworthy, my friend?
No, man, we got a great response last week. And shout out to Doug, by the way, in our chat last week, pointing out where Central State was. You and I were both clueless on that, and he helped guide us in the right direction. Again, we appreciate you, chat, coming in, showing up, even if that last episode was pre-recorded. We're experimenting with some times and stuff, so hopefully we can try to nail down moving forward. But, man, we got a great response in regard to last week's episode. Everybody loves going down the rabbit hole. A lot of people are doing the recaps, the recruiting class recaps, but what they really loved about us is that we kind of talked about the role the media played and what they were saying at the time. So I loved it. So I spent all week last week listening to podcasts about this recruiting class, going back, reading some preseason magazines, just trying to dive into it. It was such a pivotal year because if you remember, this was the first year Ryan Day was in charge. So it was his first recruiting class. Had a lot of decommitments. This will be the first time that I've made a list of the decommitments of people that stopped talking Ohio State once Urban Meyer didn't come back. So I'm excited, man. I'm excited.
You know, I'm glad you did that because that is going to be a very cool narrative to look at. And what else I would wish we could be looking at is Will Buck. What's up, guys? Didn't see you on Sunday. Or it's too late. We did a pre-record last week, Will, trying to experiment some stuff, fiddling with some YouTube numbers, this, that, and a third. I got to take a trip out of the country later this next month, and we're working on some time, working some things, but we're going to continue to get this Buckeye content to you. Aaron said, tried to tell you, well, hey, Aaron was there. Aaron was there. Normally it's on Monday. You're right. Well, we're back on Monday. We're going to get this show going. It's going to be live right now. Then we're going to have this video uploaded to the YouTube, see how it works, see how you guys, do these big, great things for us and the algorithm. Buckeye news last week, Josh, anything that sticks out?
No, man, just trying to pay attention to some of these guys in the NFL. The CFL training camps kick off. I should have came more prepared with rosters. There's some guys that Najee Murray, who was an Ohio State player that transferred to Kent State before the end of his career. He's up there for like his 10th year. Damon Webb signed with, I can't remember who he signed with. I need to be more prepared for this. We'll talk about it next week. But Damon Webb is a longtime CFL vet. We talked about Mayan Williams up there with the Argonauts, getting another chance. I believe Benjamin Victor is up there now. Jalen Gill is up there now. Austin Mack is back up there. Austin Mack had an amazing rookie year with the Montreal Alouettes, got another shot at the NFL, and he went back up there with the Alouettes. So it'll be fun to watch him. Antoine Jackson, I believe, is up there as well, former defensive tackle. I'll come prepared with a better list next week, but just trying to get ready for the CFL, gambling on that, and then paying attention to these rookies in the NFL camp.
Now, is there anything, Josh, that you won't gamble on when it comes to sports?
I only gamble on football, man. I don't
Really?
I only feel comfortable. I only gamble on sports that I watch. I don't watch basketball. I don't really watch baseball. I used to dabble with basketball when I worked at Nationwide because some of the dudes were really into it. So I felt like I had to dabble a little bit. And I had a crazy win streak of like 50 games in a row. Just because I was looking at like 3 random stats that I picked out that I heard on a podcast. But obviously what goes up must come down, bro. So that didn't last long.
I had you figured maybe you were a 3 a.m. on a Saturday night, ESPN, some Australian football, or maybe some. I've got this crazy TV box that's totally legal, and I probably shouldn't be talking about it. But I've got like last night around 8 o'clock, I turned in the Ultimate Pillow Fight Championships.
Oh, dude, hell yeah!
And they're in like a boxing ring, all that. It was, sports these days. Aaron, Will.
That next?
Yeah, right. Where we always tell him stuff he wouldn't listen, and then he'd find out later. I was right. Hey, man, Will, stay on it. Stay watching the Ohio State of Mind podcast. Tell Aaron what's what. I don't believe it.
We'll be transparent. Chris we had a scheduling conflict, so we pre-recorded on Sunday, and the numbers were really good. When you guys watch us live like this, the numbers don't transfer over to YouTube. So like after the episode is loaded up, it goes back to 0. So sometimes we'll have like 100 people on here and it goes back to 0, right? So we're gonna, after this episode, we're gonna like basically delete it and then re-upload it to see if that helps with the viewership. But yeah, we're just trying to fudge around with the numbers because we get a few listens here and there. We just want to make sure that those numbers are tracking the best they can before football season.
No, we want to capture the audience. Like I said, we went with a pre-record last week, but it didn't feel the same without having Will, Aaron, and the guys in the chat.
Yeah.
And Doug, and absolutely Doug as well. Will chimes in. Been hearing that the heat is up again on the Michigan drama. What do you think about that, Josh?
Let's talk about that for a second before we dive in, because a lot of people message me about it every day. Okay. Things are happening. Chris and I have both talked about it. We've talked to people that are involved with it. Something is going to happen to Michigan. Now, some podcasts are out there saying that they're going to take away the national championship and vacate wins. They might vacate wins. They're not taking away the national championship. That's not happening.
I stand firm. Yeah.
Yeah, but they might. I don't think they're going to vacate wins either. I think it's far more likely if they take away scholarships and maybe do like a postseason ban. In today's day and age with the NIL, I don't know how much that's going to matter. Right. I don't know what's going to happen with Sharon Moore. I know Michigan likes him. I know that he wants to be there. I think that he's a good coach, but they might want to wash their hands of this whole situation. They had two. First of all, there's a couple different issues too, because they lied. They got busted lying to the NCAA multiple times, right? So at that point, because there's a portion of society or Michigan fans that believe nothing was proven against wrong. It doesn't necessarily. First of all, that's inaccurate. Second of all, at a certain point, it doesn't really matter because you've been busted lying, right? It kind of goes back to the institution of control. Second of all, there were like 2 people on staff at least that we know about. That's not counting the GAs that kind of got busted for borderline sexual crimes, allegedly. Yeah, allegedly. So it's like, I don't. That was a really gross staff that they had there. For a multitude of reasons. So they're going to get in trouble. I don't think that I bring up the sexual stuff because I feel like people forget about it. It's obviously not going to play a role in the suspension or anything like that. But yeah, something's going to happen. I don't know when, I don't know how, I don't know where. It's not going to be as harsh as Ohio State fans would like, but it's definitely going to be worse than Michigan fans think. Someone reached out to me today and said that there's some Michigan podcast trying to figure out if it's going to be 2 or 3 games that Sharon Moore suspended, and dude, you're fooling yourself if you think that that's all that guy's going to get.
No, I agree.
We'll see. Maybe I'm wrong.
No, I agree. I think that this was all of us, for the last year, yourself and each and every other guest that's come on the pod here. It's like, hey, you know what? If it hadn't happened yet, it's not going to happen. It's going to be a nothing burger. Yeah, we've seen the 2 games for Sharon Moore. I think Michigan has showed their allegiance and loyal, and in turn, Sharon Moore has shown his loyalty to the university. He had a good season. He had a good season, yeah, and that for the team they put on the field that suited up week in week out, he had a good season. At the same time, he showed his loyalty to the university, knowing that he's going to be this fall guy, and
yeah,
that's kind of how I see it.
I would agree with that. Yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah, it's just interesting. The sign stealing thing, they also were getting busted working with other teams and sharing signs and stuff like that. They broke the rules. It is what it is. Ryan Day didn't, and he won a national championship, so I'm no longer allowed to wish him to be fired. And I don't. He won a national championship, so all is fresh in my eyes. But him losing to them after everything came out did them no favors. I mean, you guys pay attention to the media just as much as I do. I'm not fucking special, right? And all the podcasts and everybody was talking like, Ohio State's gonna, now that they don't have their signs, Ohio State's gonna beat the shit out of them. And they didn't. Now, and again, they didn't reinstall new signs, so they still had a good chunk of those signs. But still, that was the kind of the message that was out there in the media. So when they lost, it kind of dampened a little bit, and that hurts the NCAA, because the NCAA does that. They ride the momentum, they ride what the media's saying, they ride, they gauge the temperature in the room, if you will. So it didn't help. Didn't help at all.
No, they definitely go with the ebbs and flows. Will chimes in, having a feeling there's more to the story than we know besides science. I'm sure there is. Will, and I'm sure that it's a multitude of different things that are factoring a decision that we assume is still to come. You initially jumped on here and said, "Hey, you've been hearing a lot of heat on Michigan again." I've been hearing, through the grapevine here and then about just money not being paid to a certain star-studded quarterback they brought in this year, and that was what I thought you were alluding to.
I have not heard that. I don't really. The NIL thing is kind of a. I mean, you want to talk about it? You can talk about it if you.
I mean, how can we say, hey, everyone, and when I say everyone, it's the media, it's Michigan backers, it's a Michigan alumni who come out and say, hey, you guys need the money. Here's the money. We'll put it on the table, $13 million. We sat here last season all year long. Ohio State's got a $20 million team. Well, here comes Michigan with 13 for a new talent, gunslinger under center. And a couple different outlets, a couple different Michigan outlets that I've seen as, hey, maybe there's a little bit of buyer's remorse from the individual because a number that was floated out there in the media wasn't accurate, nor has it been slid in an envelope across the table. But that, again, is all hearsay.
Yeah, so there's a couple. I feel weird talking about it because it's just these NIL rumors. They're so hard. We know that the two people that talked about providing the funds to Bryce had them. We know that, yes. Right? That's different than the Florida situation with Rashada. Rashada, the guy that opened his fat mouth, didn't even have the money, right? I feel like Bryce is going to get paid. There is, the thing that fascinates me more about the Bryce Underwood story is that there's a part of it. There's a small percentage of the community that believes that maybe he's trying to create some drama so that he can pocket what money he did get and then transfer out, or he's setting the table to where he can transfer out after this year. I don't think he wanted to go to Michigan. I think that was probably pretty clear and pretty obvious when he said no to Michigan, and then they came in and swooped in and offered him more money than Brock Purdy. You know what I mean? Yeah. All of a sudden, he won to Michigan. But what do I know, right? It's hard to be unbiased about that team.
No, I wholeheartedly agree. We're not going to spend any more time on Michigan, Will, though we do appreciate the comment. Some Buckeye news, Josh got to it at the beginning. Doug chimed in. You can see Santonio Holmes there in the bottom right-hand corner. Santonio Holmes, he is on the new coaching staff at Central State, which is obviously a Division II HBCU. It is located in Wilberforce, Ohio. And, of course, it is led by former NFL and Florida State cornerback Tony Carter. So Tony Carter adds Santonio Holmes to the coaching staff. And like I said, we talked about it last week, but we both said, hey, it's good to have him back in the state of Ohio. We thought he would go back and stay and migrate in Florida like a lot of people do. But, Josh, you've got an opportunity to go see Santonio Holmes.
Yeah, man, that I might do that. That's not that I have frequented to a few HBCU games in the past, and it's always a good time. And me, my favorite video game of yesteryear is BCFX, Doug Williams BCFX, the game. The
game was the game. The other one was like the experience.
Is that right? Is it the experience? Yeah, BCFX.
The experience.
Yeah. That just glitch-filled mess where you could call an onside kick and then audible to a shotgun pass. Loved it, dude. Loved
Yeah.
it.
Other news: Big Noon kickoff. A lot of talk this last week about Big Noon kickoff. They came out and said, "Hey, week 1, Ohio State, Texas, Big Noon kickoff on Fox." Then we hear that potential Ohio lawmakers are putting together a petition to not have the one of the biggest games of the season, the biggest game of week 1, without question, Ohio State versus Texas in the shoe at a different time than noon on that Saturday. And also then Big Noon and Fox came back and said, hey, it is a Fox kickoff. We didn't say anything about Big Noon. It seems like a lot of people are still up in the air about it. The fans are going to watch this game, whether it's in the shoe, under the sun, at their home. They're going to watch the game. How many of us fans, we'd like to sit and maybe plan our Saturday around a big game? Sure. Maybe they want it later in the evening. Maybe they want to, have their dinner, have their beer, and watch the game at a later time. Do you see a big deal with it, Josh?
No, man, I like noon football. I'm in the minority on this. I hate the 3:30 games. Those are the games I hate. If you're going to go 3:30, definitely go at night. Back in the day when we were kids, the night games were usually reserved for Pac-12 teams, Washington, Cal, Oregon State, because those teams, the time difference, it was more for them than us. But the big games when I was growing up, when you were growing up, were always at noon. I don't have an issue with this at all. You don't need the game to be at 8 o'clock to get hyped, to have a great home field advantage. I will say it is a disadvantage because that it is going to be a nighttime game next year in Texas. So I do feel like to make it more fair, both games should be at noon, because whether I like it or not, the game is, your home field is more rowdy at night. But again, I don't, in the grand scheme of things, I don't have issue with it. I don't think that lawmakers that our elected officials should be wasting their time discussing college football scheduling. I think that's dumb. Although then we didn't talk about the Nick Saban thing. I guess Nick Saban has been elected as some kind of college football czar, which might not might not be a bad thing, but we can talk about that another day. But that's not just scheduling. This is purely just.
I've seen that through the grapevine. Will says, "Hey, true, we will watch, but wouldn't Fox make more money?" They probably would. Ratings would probably equate to more views on a primetime game, but at the same time, I'm not a shareholder at Fox. And like Josh said, hey, we grew up, big games were on noon. And also when we grew up, we grew up watching Buckeye football on 10 TV, on the local CBS. When we would get a noon game on ESPN, it was like, oh wow, the whole nation's watching this.
And they were always playing something garbage. It was the Northwestern game, the Central Michigan game. Yeah. Those were never big games. Certain aspects. That's why I love sports too, is because there's like revisionist history. I don't think that Fox would make more money if this game was at night, because the college football, when we were growing up, the big game was at noon. And then you had all the shitty games at night and stuff like that, because no one stayed at home Saturday night to watch football, right? And then the SEC and the ESPN was like, hey, let's just start to do games at night and see what happens, because the Big Ten just soaked up all the noon action. People were tuning into Ohio State. They were tuning into Ron Dane in Wisconsin, and they were tuning into Iowa and Michigan. That's what they were doing. The noon games that was it. And then now people are tuning in. They're making their Saturday nights about college football. And now you're seeing this shift where all the games are at prime time. Look at the schedule every week. Look at the schedule every week. Most of your big game, most of your SEC games are like at night now every week. You know what I mean? Yeah. So I do think that your noon games, the noon slates are usually, you guys play DFS as much as I do. Your noon slates of like the Power 5, it's like 5 games. It's like 5 games, dude. So there's going to be more. This is going to be the big game that everybody's going to avoid. There'll be 5 cool games at night. There always is, because that's the shift that we've seen scheduling wise. Eventually, it will shift back. I don't know when. I don't know how. The amount of channels and all that has made it extremely hard to predict. But eventually, it will shift back, just like everything does. But right now, everything is in that we're moving back to the 90s, where everything's moving. All the big games moving in the noon window.
Well, I would also argue at the same time, you got to think about how many people their only source. It wasn't a plethora of streaming services and online streaming, all things like that. You didn't have these Saturday night games when people were doing things, and people that weren't doing things, they were sitting and watching their network sitcoms and their scheduled programs and the Saturday night movie, if you would, and that's just that's definitely not a thing anymore.
No, it's not. But everybody's competing for that nighttime spot. So
no, absolutely. And I'm not complaining. I'm here on the West Coast. I can get all my nighttime games in at dinner, so it works for me. A lot of raves, a lot of talking from players, which is exciting. And we were both on the fence. I wouldn't say we're on the fence, but we were very slowly dipping our toe in the water of Matt Patricia being this defensive coordinator for Ohio State. But a lot of players have come out within the last week saying, hey, we love everything that Matt Patricia's done. We expected him to have this abrasive personality when he came in, and everyone's saying, hey, it's not what can you do for me, Matt Patricia's, hey, what can I do for you to get you to the next level, get you to be untapped to the potential that you have. And a lot of raves in the last week about Matt Patricia and Matt Patricia's coaching style. Even players coming out and saying, hey, we feel faster on the field having Matt Patricia on it. I don't know how that happens, but I'm with it.
Yeah, so I never dipped my toe in. When they hired Matt Patricia, I dove into the deep end, bro. I thought it was a great hire. But some of it's because I'm being, myopic about my viewpoints, right? I'm listening to people that know him in New England and kind of ignoring those that knew him in Detroit. We had Jeff Risson on, who I respect greatly, who knew him in Detroit when he was the head coach and he was taking on a lot of responsibility. And everything that Jeff says and writes, I believe, I would trust him with my life. With that said, is that he's not going to have that role at Ohio State. So there are some things that we need to kind of tailor back. I think he's going to be great at it. I do think, I think that these players can be bad because they're not going to be limited to the very scheme specific assignments that Jim Knowles had, right? They're going to be able to read the ball and use their instincts a little bit better and have more freedom to do so, especially a guy like Caleb Downs. I think Matt Patricia was a great hire. I think we're going to see it work out. The defense is going to be worse. I want to be very clear about that. I don't want people messaging me be like, the defense is terrible. Yeah, I know it's not as good as last year because there's not 14 draft picks in the defense anymore, right? You know what I mean? Obviously, I understand that, 3 of the defensive linemen win the first 2 rounds, okay? Calm down. But I think that everybody's going to be really surprised by how great this defense is.
Yeah, you are right. This is a defense that is, in fact, replacing 8 starters.
Not just 8 starters. Most of them were fucking good. You know what I mean? We're not talking about when they had to replace Robert Landers, which guy, God bless Robert Landers, but you know what I mean? We're talking about guys that are fucking good. I mean, Cody Simon was probably the weakest link that they had to replace, and he was Rose Bowl MVP. He was the defensive MVP.
I remember all the points we gave him last week.
That's right.
Yeah. And of those 8 starters, hey, there's all those draft picks. They went to new teams. Of all those draft picks, Donovan Jackson, Josh Simmons, Travion Henderson, Jack Sawyer, and Will Howard, they're all keeping their same number as a Buckeye on their new NFL teams. If you look up there to the right-hand side, I got a list of all the individuals who got drafted, where they went, and the new number they will be adorning this season. As a Patriots fan, I'm excited that Travion Henderson gets to keep the same number. I know Devin McCourty left 3 years ago, but I'm going to go ahead and make my purchase. I know you're a guy that sits and waits until, I think you just now bought a Bernie Kosar jersey because it went on sale.
Yeah, pretty much. That's exactly how I work. Yeah.
We talked a few weeks ago that I buy one new jersey every year. So when I'm bitching and complaining about the team and I'm sitting like, why did we do this? Why did we do this? And my wife looks at me, he's like, what are you part of the team I didn't know about? Well, I just bought a $200 jersey. I'm actually part of management.
I contributed. So, yeah. You're like one of those people that own stock in the Packers.
Exactly.
I own this team, right? Damn it.
I've got 1.5%. Absolutely. That's the Buckeye News. Slow week of Buckeye News. We fished for what we could. We are going to get to our recruiting breakdown of 2019 class. As we talked about last week, our recruiting point system. Again, I didn't even think about it. I forgot to put the third team Big Ten points on here. Individual hardware, we're talking positional awards. We're talking big bowl game MVPs, what have you, players of the year, quarterbacks of the year, freshmen of the year, what have you. They're going to get 5 points. If you're drafted within the first 3 rounds, you're going to receive 5 points. Drafted between rounds 4 and 7, you're going to get 2. All-American, big 5-pointer. First team Big Ten, you're going to get 3. Second team, you're going to get 2. And third team, you're going to get 1. Josh, do you want to lay the 2019 recruiting class landscape on us before we dive in?
Yeah, man, this is really interesting. I'm hoping I don't waste everybody's time. I'm hoping everybody finds this interesting. But this is Ryan Day's first recruiting class, right? Urban Meyer's gone. Ryan Day jumps in, and this is what he's dealing with. Now, we're going to do the same thing we did last week. We're going to go over the top 10 recruits in the country, just so you have an understanding of how strong or how weak the recruiting class is. The number one recruit, and these top 10 was taken from Athlon's preseason magazine, which was printed right after the spring games. And we talked about last week, 24/7 Sports has another update right after that, which is kind of, we talked about some of those guys where they kind of read the tea leaves and all of a sudden they plummet. We're not going to do that. We're going to stick to what they had beforehand. Nolan Smith, linebacker, went to Georgia. He ended up being a first-round pick. He was the number 1 recruit that country that year. I would say that he was worth it. Number 2 recruit was Kayvon Thibodeau, defensive end, went to Oregon. Ohio State fans will remember him because he was hurt, and we still lost. First round pick, I would say he was also worth it. He also lived up to the hype. Number 3, Derek Stingley Jr., cornerback, went to LSU, first round pick. He also lived up to the hype. He dealt with some injuries early in his career, so he had like one good year, but my God, it was great. Jaden Hazelwood was the number 4 recruit that year, wide receiver, went to Oklahoma, was there for 2 years, left with Lincoln Riley. Lincoln Riley didn't want no part of the USC, so he went to Arkansas, ended up being an undrafted free agent with the Philadelphia Eagles, no longer in the NFL. Number 5, Antonio Alfano, defensive end, went to Alabama. Now, Ohio State was Urban Meyer was in the loop with this kid. He was a Jersey kid. He didn't play 1 snap at Alabama, never showed up to classes. Now, rumors were his grandmother passed and that messed with his head. He transferred to Colorado, followed Mel Tucker, who was the defensive coordinator at Alabama at the time, head coach of Colorado. Did not play a snap for Colorado either. Then he transferred to Independence Community College. Those who watch Netflix's Last Chance U might be familiar with that. He was not on the TV show, obviously, but you know, he also did not play a snap for them. So he played I think he's playing this year at Lackawanna Community College in Pennsylvania. He played last year. I think he had like 5 tackles. I think we could classify him as a bust. I would class Hazelwood as a bust too. He was. I've got 2 on my ticker so far. Yeah. Next guy, number 6 overall recruit, is Trey Sanders, running back, went to Alabama. He dealt with a lot of injuries. Transferred to TCU, also didn't do much. We'll classify him as a bust, but that was a guy that kind of dealt with a lot of injuries. Number 7, Evan Neal. I mean, you agree, bust, correct? I've got 3. Okay. Number 7, Evan Neal, offensive tackle, went to Alabama. We're all aware of Evan Neal and his greatness. He started immediately as a true freshman at Alabama, which is almost impossible at offensive line. We got drafted in the first round, completely worth it. Number 8, Zach Pickens, defensive tackle of South Carolina, was drafted in the 3rd round, left early. I would classify him as a hit. Because I think he would have been drafted earlier if he would have stayed, and he went to South Carolina, was still all SEC, not quite all American. Number 9 is maybe the most controversial on this list. Brew McCoy was a pure athlete. He ended up playing wide receiver. He committed to Texas, never played it down. Got out of his letter of intent, went to USC, got in trouble for some kind of assault for the female. Transferred to Tennessee, got in trouble again, had struggled with grades, struggled with injuries, and then he retired this past offseason. Retired seems like a really friendly version of no one wanted to play with me anymore. Bust. He was like the 3rd receiver, I think, on the team 2 years ago, so things were looking good for him, and then again, he's just a worthless piece of shit. Number 10. He's one of those guys where, like, when you read his story, you're like, man, the world might be a better place without sports, because a guy like that does not deserve 7 opportunities. Number 10, Darnell Wright, offensive tackle, went to Tennessee, was a first-round draft pick by the Chicago Bears. Obviously a hit. So Chris and I kind of had a discussion like, it felt like the last class was kind of weak when we looked over the 2020 numbers. But it looks like the draft numbers are actually the same. 6 guys were drafted in each. Correct, based off of what I have. Now, the difference is I would say that this class is stronger because A couple of the, even though there was, I think there was 2 guys drafted in the last year's batch, but one of them didn't get drafted on the original team that he was at. He had to transfer. He transferred. So I don't know if that really counts. And then he was also drafted late. All these guys, these 6 guys, were all drafted fairly early. So it is interesting. I think it kind of goes back to our point where it's a slight difference, but it is interesting. Let's go over the top 5 guys from Ohio. Okay, top 5 guys from Ohio that year. Zach Harrison, defensive end. He obviously went to Ohio State. This was a big deal for Ryan Day. This was the first big win for Ryan Day. We'll get into it a little bit more. But, we brought up his name, so I might as well just finish the story. When he committed to Ohio State, obviously he's from Olentangy. Urban Meyer left. Michigan came in and swooping in. Penn State came in and swooping in. He was very, very close to flipping to Michigan. Very, very close. Ryan Day spent a lot of his offseason trying to convince Zach Harrison to come to Ohio. So this was, even though it's an Ohio kid, I would view this as a big win, a good starting point for Ryan Day. End up being a 3rd-round draft pick. I feel like that's a big hit. Second player from Ohio that year, Juwan Briggs, defensive tackle, went to Virginia first, then transferred to Cincinnati, had a fairly successful career at Cincinnati. He plays with the Cleveland Browns right now as a 7th-round draft pick. I would classify that as a hit. But again, not for Virginia. So it's kind of like, all right, it's 50-50. Third player, Zeke Correll, center, went to Notre Dame, was not very good. Went to North Carolina State, was not very good. Number 4, Cade Stover, the Gatorade Player of the Year for the state of Ohio. Linebacker, obviously everybody knows him. Went to Ohio State, ended up being a 4th-round pick, made the transition to tight end. We'll get into Cade Stover's career a little bit later. He's one of those guys I kind of put an asterisk to because I feel like he could have been so much better if they would have just let him stay at tight end. But remember, he played tight end, and then all those injuries happened in the Rose Bowl. So he spent 13 practices back at linebacker after he moved to tight end, and then he played a chunk of the offseason at linebacker, and then he finally officially moved back to tight end. It was just kind of a whirlwind for him, and it's kind of unfair. I think he could have been a lot better. Nolan Rumler was the 5th player from Ohio that year. Guard, went to Michigan. Ohio State lost out on him. He went to Michigan. Didn't do anything. Went to Kent State. Not a big miss there. Anything about that list before we go on to the next portion that I want to share?
No, honestly, other than, I think it wasn't covered a whole lot, but I think you're absolutely right. Cade Stover did, in fact, get, jerked around a good bit. But, he did come out to be a stellar tight end, a real strong point in that offense. And, he's doing well for the amount of balls coming his way and the role he plays with the Houston Texans. So, no, absolutely.
And I think that the class in Ohio was stronger this year than the 2020 season, if I remember. Only 2 guys got drafted. Yeah,
I would agree. I didn't have the time to go crazy with the graphics this week. Schoolwork got in the way, but like you said, big hit in the state of Ohio.
Yes.
Ryan Day goes and grabs him. We got Zach Harrison. He ends his career. He was a 1st-team All-Big Ten, 2-time second-team All-Big Ten. He was drafted in the 3rd round with the 75th overall pick. We awarded him 12 points. Again, he was number 1 in the state, number 2 in the position, number 22 nationally.
Yeah, Zach Harrison, a U.S. Army All-American kid, 5-star. He played immediately. Played a little bit as a true freshman. I think he even started 1 game, which is pretty big, right?
Right.
So yeah, he lived up to the hype. 100. A little frustrated. They thought those sack numbers would be higher. He wasn't a sack artist. Unfortunately, I know that a ton of that was Chase Young's last year, so they were really looking at Harrison as going to be the replacement for Chase Young, and he was, but he was definitely a different style, and slightly worse. Before we dive into the rest of the class, so I do want to point out too, if you go back and you listen, so this was a disappointing class for Ohio State overall. They were ranked 14th based on 24/7's rankings. That was the lowest ranking basically since Jim Tressel was the head coach at Ohio State. A lot of people were upset with Ryan Day and how his class turned out. I compiled a list of some of the people that were in the circle visiting Ohio State were committed to Urban Meyer and backed out once Ryan Day was the head coach. Antonio Fano never committed to Ohio State, but he was taking official visits to Ohio State under Urban Meyer. Urban Meyer left. He had no interest. Dwan Mathis was committed to Ohio State for almost 2 years, ended up going to Georgia. Now, whatever. We'll summarize it after I go through these. Samson James, 4-star running back, ended up going to decommitted, went to Indiana. Kane Patterson, linebacker, 4-star linebacker, decommitted from Ohio State, went to Clemson. Daxton Hill, 4-star safety, 4-star cornerback, decommitted, went to Michigan. Jordan Battle, 4-star safety, decommitted, went to Alabama. Doug Nestor, 4-star guard, decommitted, went to Virginia Tech. Now, these are classified as misses. If you go back and listen to any podcast from any Ohio State fan or even the national media, they're going to talk shit about. They're gonna act like Dwayne Mathis and Kane Patterson and Samson James are the next coming. Out of that list, the only two that were worth a shit were Daxton Hill and Jordan Battle. Those were the only two that were worth a shit.
Everybody else, Battle jumped right to the top of my list. Yeah,
Daxton Hill was great too. Daxton Hill was great at Michigan. That was a big miss. But all the rest of those guys, I mean, and remember too, Dwayne Mathis also, when he was visiting Georgia, the media was playing it out like, oh, he went down to Georgia and Georgia convinced him to go there because they knew Justin Fields was leaving. So they told him he was going to be replacing Justin Fields, right? Mm-hmm. And they were kind of making fun of Ryan Day, like, ha, 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 ha. You got stuck with Justin Fields, and Georgia gets the bright new shiny toy and Dwayne Mathis. Mathis blows. Mathis blew. I think he ended up transferring out and didn't play D2 ball and sucked there too. All these guys were not very good. Kane Patterson transferred to Vanderbilt, did nothing. Doug Nestor transferred from Virginia Tech to West Virginia, did nothing. So really those two guys that they missed on. So it's very interesting because that's another complaint, right, is that this class was smaller. Urban Meyer always had 22, 25 guys. This class was 16 guys. So Ryan Day just got a lot of hatred towards him that offseason. Like a lot of people were kind of questioning it. And I feel like that's unfair because none of those guys fucking hit. I do want to read a couple. I got a bunch, but I'll only read a couple. Lindy's Magazine wrote, Ohio State, again, 14 class. We're not used to seeing Ohio State ranked this low, but that's a product of numbers more than talent. The Buckeyes only signed 17 players, but only 2 programs, Alabama and Georgia, had a higher ranking per commit than Ohio State. The pound-for-pound success is powered by 3 5-stars. 1, Zach Harrison is a uniquely athletic. He is a unique athletically. That's not a sentence. Whatever. As any prospect in the country, he's a 6'5", 253-pound long defensive end who has legitimate 4.5 speed in the 40. Garrett Wilson is one of the nation's most productive wide receivers and ranked number 2 nationally at the position with elite ball skills and competitiveness. Then there's Harry Miller, a mauler on an offensive lineman that projects to center as one of the nation's safest bets on the line of scrimmage. Despite the low numbers, the success was encouraging for our first look at Ryan Day as a recruiter. He was instrumental in landing Harrison, but also played a major role in going as far west as Hawaii to land 4-star offensive lineman Enoch Vamahi away from the Pac-12 national powers. Okay, so again, I'll only read a couple. The next one, Ohio State had the 3rd best recruiting class in the Big Ten by basically everybody. Penn State was number 1. Michigan was number 2. 3 24/7 sports composite 5-star lead the class, including defensive end Zach Harrison, a freak athlete, center Harry Miller, lands the offensive line class, wide receiver Garrett Wilson, one of those 3 5-stars, and track star Jamison Williams bring more playmaking ability to the offense. Also watch for multi-talented Cade Stover, who likely becomes a defensive end in college. Nailed that. Well, kind of. Yeah. The big signing coup. Again, Ohio State keeping Zach Harrison at home was monumental. It may seem like a layup on the surface because he's from just outside Columbus, but there was some thought that Ohio State might be too close for him. Michigan and Penn State both made strong pushes for him, but the Buckeyes closed it with their win over the Wolverines late in the season, playing a factor. Losing a top in-state kid and one that talented to a conference rival would have been a tough blow, and Ryan Day and his staff kept that from happening. Another one, well, I'll read one more. This class represents the transition from Urban Meyer to Ryan Day, a head coach, but even before Ryan Day was named the successor, he did a lot of heavy lifting in this class. As an offensive-minded coach, he should be excited with skill position players like wide receiver 5-star Garrett Wilson and Jamison Williams, one of the fastest Big Ten signees. I got more, but we'll cut. We got to move this forward some, but you get an idea, right? Yeah. Then when we read over the 2020 recruiting class, there was a lot more names, but a lot more guys that didn't show up. All those guys showed up other than Harry Miller, right? Yeah. Harry Miller played. He just wasn't very good, and he had some mental health stuff that popped up. But, the 2020 little news articles, a lot of those guys transferred the fuck out. So it is kind of interesting to see that comparison. But all right, we covered Zach Harrison.
Zach, hey, Will wants to know, is Zach still in the league?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And he plays.
And he plays. Will comes back in and says, "Hey, I really didn't realize we lost that many recruits during the coaching change." And no, we certainly did. And hey, Doug, he's late to the show, but better late than never. So we talk Zach Harrison. We talk all these accolades. He receives 12 points. It seems like almost a travesty because I mean, the rich only get richer, and Ohio State, in the last decade, become known for these talented wide receiver rooms. Number 2 receiver in the country, Garrett Wilson from Lake Travis, Texas. He commits to the Buckeyes. Ends up his career with a first team All Big Ten. Also, the year before that, he was second team All Big Ten. He was drafted in the top 10. It sucks to give him only 10 points, doesn't it?
Yeah, it blows. This is a former our Army All-American, very highly touted recruit. It's a shame. This deserves an asterisk because he left early, right? If he wouldn't have left early, maybe he would have had 20, 25 points. But unfortunately, he did. This is a guy who he played immediately. He played in all 14 games his freshman year, had 30 receptions for over 400 yards and 5 touchdowns. And then in 2020, his sophomore year, he became the second player in school history to record 4 straight games with at least 100 yards receiving. So the guy did not disappoint. Garrett Wilson, a lot of people look at him and they say, "Oh, Texas kid." That's not really true. He was born in Chicago and he was raised in Ohio. He grew up an Ohio State fan. They moved there when he was like in middle school or some shit. So that's not really a true Texas steal. If anybody's keeping track, but yeah, that's where we're at. And Garrett Wilson was listed on all these things. They mentioned, Ohio State's replacing Paris Campbell, Johnny Dixon, Terry McLaurin. So he was obviously going to get a route to play. That was kind of expected, basically, by everybody we were reading.
No, absolutely. And we've also got just beneath him the number 36 overall recruit in the nation, Harry Miller from Buford, Georgia. He was right down the road when I was stationed in Georgia, and I did get to see Harry Miller play. Number 1 center coming out of high school. Like you said, I think it was Lindy's saying, hey, he might be the safest pick. Harry Miller dealt with some issues, though.
Yeah, and he was thrown out there immediately. He played every game as a freshman. He saw time, and then I wrote that he started 7 games as a sophomore, which included the Big Ten championship game and the Sugar Bowl at guard.
Yes.
Yeah, and then he retired. He struggled. There was a common thing on X or Twitter at the time was pointing out Harry Miller's deficiencies, and rightfully so. There were even a couple games where he didn't even travel with the team when they were going to away games. There was just some issues there. So unfortunately, he had some mental health issues, and Ryan Day, being a good human being, was able to help hold his hand and guide him through that, which is great. That's awesome. Unfortunately, we had to give him 0 points.
We had to give him 0 points. I'm going to argue, he of this recruiting class, as highly touted as he was, the only person that was number 1 in their position to commit to Ohio State it does hurt not to give him any points. There is a player that we're going to talk about here in a few that hurts not to give him any points as well, but we'll get to that. We said his name 3 or 4 times now. Cade Stover, the recruited as an outside linebacker, recruited as the second best outside linebacker in the state of Ohio when he came out. He obviously back and forth linebacker, defensive end. We're trying to figure out what we're going to do with him. He becomes a tight end. He becomes a stellar tight end, stellar enough to where he was first team All Big Ten, third team All Big Ten. He was drafted in the 4th round with the 123rd overall pick, and he was awarded Big Ten Tight End of the Year. Cade Stover gets 11 points.
Yeah, this is one I think that if he would have just stuck at tight end from the get-go, we'd be talking about him as an all-time great. Maybe not, but it's interesting. I think he definitely would add more points. Ohio Gatorade Player of the Year. I'm looking at my Street and Smith magazine as well, and it even lists Cade Stover as a pass rusher, potential defensive end, and that's where they play. That's where he played his freshman year. He played defensive end his freshman year. He played in 4 games. They took a red shirt. Then he moved to defensive. Then he moved to tight end the next year, the next spring, and then they moved back to linebacker for the season. And then he was moved back to tight end, where he finally caught 5 passes for 76 yards. Then they moved back to linebacker for the Rose Bowl. and then they moved him back to tight end. So his career was really up and down. That was an utter failure, I believe, on the coaching staff to not recognize where he should be playing earlier. So that's a bummer.
No, it's a bummer, but he has been reunited with C.J. Stroud. He is a tight end. If I call him a linebacker, hell, he got me twisted up now. He's a starting tight end for the Houston Texans. Will jumps in, says, "Hey, not sure how Cade made it through college. Always taking big hits and kept going. He did. He would go across the middle and just get punished and get up. And I know, obviously that comes to my mind is that that topple in the end zone where he lands just square on the crown of his head and bounces right back up. I think that highlight's always in my mind when I think of Cade Stover.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. Right after that, we've got the number three athlete in the state of New Jersey this year, Ronnie Hickman. Ronnie Hickman, came in and he ended up second team All Big Ten and a third team All Big Ten. When it comes to Ronnie Hickman, did you think we reached his full potential? Did we push him to his ceiling the time that he was a Buckeye?
No, this is another guy I put an asterisk next to because he left early. If he stayed another year, I don't know if he would have been all-time great, but we would definitely be remembering Ronnie Hickman in a much better light. Street and Smith, I'm looking at that now, listed him as a potential star player, and I believe that. We're seeing it with the Cleveland Browns. He's playing really, really solid ball. He was undrafted, and he's been sticking around on the roster with the Browns, plays, starts. So he was obviously just scratching the surface at Ohio State. Remember, too, he broke his leg his senior year in high school, or he had an injury his senior year in high school. So he immediately took the redshirt his first year. Yeah. And then he played in 5 games his sophomore year. Or his redshirt freshman year on special teams, had a couple tackles, and then he started every game the next year. He started every game as a redshirt sophomore, and he was great. And he started every game as a redshirt junior, and then he left. If he would have stayed that other year, I really do think we'd be talking about him in a more positive light. But unfortunately, he did leave early. Unfortunately, how many points did we have to give him? It was not very many, right?
Just
3. We gave him 3 points. That's a little upsetting. I think that he probably would have been. There's more there. But yeah, Jamison Williams is the next one. Chris, I'll let you do the introduction. But this is obviously you're talking about when you say we got to give 0 points.
This one was a damn shame to give him 0 points. Yeah, number 1 out of the state of Missouri, wide receiver Jamison Williams, who was the special teams player of the year, a first team All-American, a first team conference pick, and a first round draft pick, but none of them happened in the Big Ten. Jamison Williams. It hurts to give you 0 points. Crowded room. A lot of players, only 1 football, Josh.
Yeah, he should have stayed. This is a guy that, again, I think that the coaching staff fucked up. They really should have made a better effort to keep him. He was very clearly talented, a former U.S. Army All-American as well. And he played immediately. He caught 6. He had 6 receptions for 112 yards and a touchdown his freshman year. As a sophomore, he started 6 games. Yeah. They liked him. In the Sugar Bowl, he scored a touchdown against Clemson, and then he transferred out. He was a part of the game plan. He wanted to be a number 1, and that wasn't going to happen with Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave on the roster, unfortunately for him. But I think maybe a more intense talk needed to occur with him, but he ended up being a first-round pick for the Detroit Lions, so we know how skilled he is. But also, we know how big of a pain in the ass he is, too, because he's got busted, doing 35 things off the field that he shouldn't be doing with the Detroit Lions.
He's a person that stays in the limelight for distracting reasons. Yeah, for all the wrong reasons in a sense. No, it did seem like it was so many toys to play with, only 1 football on that offense when his sophomore season. But at the same time, you had so many weapons, and he was almost in a sense a decoy for a lot of things. He was a guy who, with his, very, very good vertical speed, he was a guy that went out there and cleared out safeties for Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson and things like that. But
he had Olympic speed for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Just after Jameson Williams, we got Emak Vimati, as I was, the number 1 offensive guard out of Hawaii.
Yes.
We had to give him 0 points. He was a transfer as well. You talked earlier how it was touted that Ryan Day was able to go all the way out on to the West Coast and to get their highly touted recruit in the state of Hawaii.
Yeah, Enoch was seen as a huge deal. He was a big get. This was seen as a theft for Ryan Day, and he was not good. He started. I'm trying to go back. He played in 3 games his true freshman year. Then he got redshirted. He played in 8 games in 2021, or he played 6 games in 2020, 8 in 2021. They were pretty much all reserve roles. In 2022, he did get to start against Michigan. Okay, and I don't remember him being horrible, but the 2023 game, with the 2023 season, is when he started against Missouri in the bowl game, and that was just.
Okay. It's all coming back to me now.
Yeah, and then he transferred to Washington, where he started. He was okay, but he's not. He's just he's not good.
I would agree with you there. Will says, "Hey, Jameson Williams made the right choice. If he stayed, it would have been a gamble. As if he wouldn't play as much. Thinking about the same thing as Lincoln. I wouldn't argue, Will. I mean, we're talking about we've had the likes of Chris Olave, Garrett Wilson, and of course Marvin Harrison Jr. Now we're talking Emeka Egbuka, we're talking Jeremiah Smith, we're talking Carnell Tate. I understand, but it's always a big what if. It's always a big what if. Does that offense shift and change around what returns and what you saw previously on the field that last year? Who's to say?
Yeah, I think that the offense has proven under Ryan Day that it can sustain 3 receivers, and 3 receivers can be uber productive. And he was good enough to where that might have been what took them over the top. It is interesting. It should also be noted too that 2020 was the COVID year. We talked about that 2020 recruiting class, and a lot of those kids, when you look over, redshirt first year, obviously. Well, the second year is where they got most of their action, right? Because Ohio State's playing, buttfuck University, and you're getting some garbage time. I mean, I think we even talked about a couple players that had big shiny moments in some of those shitty games. You're not going to find that here. I think that also hampered this class greatly. You're seeing guys not get to play their sophomore year because there was only 8 games and they were all Big Ten games, right?
Yeah.
So they didn't get to play at all. They didn't get better at all. They limited the practices that year, if you guys remember, right? Yeah. That was one of the things Ohio State got in trouble for because Harbaugh tattled and the linebackers were practicing. So this group was really hampered by that. I really do believe that there's a lot of guys in this group that could have been better, and they just weren't allowed because the COVID fucked it up. But there we are. Number 8, Steel Chambers, athlete, 4-star from Georgia.
Doug jumped in real quick. Hey, didn't Josh Fryer relieve Enoch in that Michigan game? I believe he did, Doug.
He might have. Enoch was not very good. When Enoch played, he was not very good.
No, one of Josh's favorite linebackers in Ohio State history, Steel Chambers. We can give him is 1 point for being a 3rd-team All Big Ten selection. Steel Chambers.
Yeah. He shows up a lot in these preseason magazines as well. I'm trying to, Steel Chambers could play multiple positions, but is likely an impact tailback. Well, that ended up being wrong. He did play running back his first 2 years. This is a guy that deserves a little bit of an asterisk because he just wasn't a good running back. He should have played linebacker from the very beginning. I don't think he would have been an all-time great, but much like Ronnie Hickman, he could have been a guy that was a middle-round draft pick and had it could have been viewed as much better. But instead he played the first 2 years at running back where he had no shot at doing anything. Just it wasn't happening. Then he switched to linebacker at 2021. And then he started. He started a couple games. So it's like he start his first year at linebacker, he started like 4 games. And then the next year he started every game. Not because he did have pure athleticism. He just didn't know how to play linebacker. That's a guy, he's playing really well in the UFL this year. Maybe he gets another chance in the NFL. Maybe he's going to grow into his position a little bit more. But yeah, he kind of got screwed,
It wouldn't be the first time, and believe me, we're gonna talk about some of these other recruiting classes, and we're gonna peel that onion back as well. Moving on though, we've got Bryson Shaw. This is a guy that a lot of people were really high on when it came to Bryson Shaw. But I had to give him 0 points.
Yeah, I think he tried really hard. I remember him at a bunch of press conferences. At the time, I was covering the team by this time, and he was he owned up to all his issues. He caused a lot of headaches, though. People were high on him, but immediately people were like, "This guy can't play here." He did play 3 games as a true freshman, but Miami, Ohio, Maryland, Rutgers, and then in 2020. He played in 5 games: Nebraska, Penn State, Rutgers, Michigan State, and even saw action at Alabama. So clearly they liked him. 2021, he starts to do a little bit better. He was really good in the Rose Bowl. Had 9 tackles against Utah in the Rose Bowl. Even had a fumble recovery. Had a pretty good game against Purdue that year. Had a good game against Michigan. Had an interception on the goal line against Michigan that year. And then he started every game that last year before he transferred to USC, where he was, again, slightly below average, I would say. I think that he was losing playing time every day that went by at USC.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't argue that either. Just after him, we've got the second pride of Cleveland St. Ignatius, Mr. Tommy Eichenberg. We awarded him 13 points. 13 points because he was a 2-time first-team All-Big Ten selection. Yeah. He was drafted in the 5th round with the 148th pick overall, and he was Big Ten Linebacker of the Year. Tommy Eichenberg.
Yeah, Tommy Eichenberg. He's an interesting one. This is a big Ryan Day win too, because Tommy Eichenberg was committed to Boston College. They were going to, like I said, they were going to bring in Kane Patterson. Kane Patterson left. Ryan Day switched it up, got Tommy Eichenberg in. Tommy Eichenberg ended up being a far superior linebacker to what Kane Patterson became at Vanderbilt. So yeah, big shout out to Ryan Day for snagging Eichenberg and continuing to stay at home. Got a red shirt his freshman year, but did see time in 4 games before getting that red shirt, and then was named a starter his junior year, and he was second on the team in tackles, defensive MVP of the 2022 Rose Bowl, had 17 tackles in that game. So, yeah, I mean, he was a very, very solid player for Ohio State, and I would say that was a big recruiting win for Ryan Day.
No, I would agree. I said the second biggest pride of Cleveland St. Ignatius. Can you tell me the first?
St. Ignatius. Oh, Brian Hoyer.
Brian Hoyer. There he is. We're on the same page. Will chimes in. Tommy, the broken hand. Yeah, it seemed like he played most of his collegiate career with that club on his hand.
No shit.
I'm so glad that you picked up on Brian Hoyer. I love you for that. Right after that, right out of Mentor, Ohio, we've got Ryan Jacoby. He was the number 9 offensive tackle in the state of Ohio that year. He was a transfer.
Yeah, got a redshirt 2019. He didn't play at all. He didn't play at all before transferring out to Pittsburgh.
No.
And I think he started at Pittsburgh, but again, very below average player.
Yeah. Nothing big on that one. Right after Mr. Jacoby, we got Marcus Crowley. You guys remember him at running back from Trinity Christian Academy and from Jacksonville, Florida. 0 points. He was a guy who was always there. He got some garbage time carries here and there, but I put an Army acronym there at the very end, NSTR, just nothing significant to report.
Yeah, this was the Florida Gatorade Player of the Year that year. This was a big gift for Ohio State. This was a big gift for Ryan Day to lock in. He was a guy, again, I put an asterisk next to because he suffered a lot of injuries. He blew out his knee. He blew out his knee as a true freshman. He played in 7 games as a true freshman before blowing out his knee. He came back in 2020, and he had a pretty good game against Maryland where he had 82 yards, and then he ripped off a 53-yard run against Northwestern, and then he blew out his knee again. So that was basically it for Marcus Crowley. So unfortunately, we do have to give him 0 points, but again, it would have been interesting to see what that guy could have done healthy because I don't think that he was terrible.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Coming from the same high school as Ryan Jacoby, Noah Potter, defensive end.
Yeah, Noah Potter. He played the 4 games as a true freshman, took a red shirt, and then he saw a little bit of more action in 2020. Actually got a couple tackles, and then he was done. He didn't play at all in 2021. Transferred to Cincinnati, was not very good. Transferred to North Carolina State. He was named a starter, I think, in the spring at North Carolina State. I don't remember. He signed a pretty large NIL deal at North Carolina State. I remember there being a significant amount of hype around him because it was him and another wide receiver, I think, that transferred to North Carolina State. So they were thinking, oh, there was going to be a resurgence there, and he didn't do anything there either. I should say he didn't do anything. He was a very below average player the entirety of his college career.
Yeah. No, I can't argue that at all. The number 27th rated athlete in the class, Craig Young from Fort Wayne, Indiana, another transfer.
Yes, transfer to Kansas. Craig Young came in as an athlete, 3-star athlete. Everybody kind of knew what he was going to be. He did play 14 games his first 2 years. He actually had a pretty decent game in 2021, his junior year against Michigan State, or I guess it was his redshirt sophomore year. I think he had a tackle for a loss during, it wasn't a blowout yet.
Yeah.
And he played 12 games that junior year. He had a sack. He even had an interception, a touchdown. This was kind of a spring hero. This was one of those guys where every spring you'd hear about Craig Young's the perfect blitz guy. Craig Young's the perfect Buckeye or Buster. What was the stupid position?
Silver Bullet.
Bandit, the Silver Bullet. Yeah. And it never happened. He transferred to Kansas and wasn't very good there either. I think he's with the Bengals. I do think he made it in the NFL. He kind of got moved around a lot. Maybe it's something where he didn't scratch the surface. I don't know. I wouldn't bet on him. I wouldn't bet on him doing anything. I just, it is what it is.
No, it is what it is. And what it is another transfer. Jaden McKenzie, Wake Forest, North Carolina. He was the number 31 ranked defensive tackle in the country this year. Yeah. Another transfer.
Yeah, transferred to East Carolina, where he was okay. I don't think he was like a big impact guy. I think he definitely started a few games. He saw some action as a true freshman, played in 2 games, played against Miami, right? Also played against Maryland. I think he played in games where they weren't blowouts yet, so they actually liked him. 2021, he played even more. He had 4 tackles against Rutgers with a forced fumble. That was probably his big game. 2022, again, he saw action in 7 games. Had a big game against Toledo, where he was just unmovable. Had a tackle behind the line of scrimmage. I think. Oh, he had 3 tackles that year, or that game against Toledo. He even had a couple crucial stops against Wisconsin and Michigan. So he was definitely in the plan. 2023, he played 9 games. Had a pretty big game against Indiana, Youngstown State, and Western Kentucky. But again, it was pretty clear that his ceiling was pretty limited to just the fact unmovable object. And he went back home to East Carolina. That's where he's from, anyway. So
yeah, no,
probably a good move for him.
I do vaguely remember that. Josh, want to let you get your roses here. Will comes in. Dang, Josh, do you have notes in front of you? Just remember all this stuff.
Oh, dude, I got notes in front of me, bro. Don't worry about. No, it's not all coming from the old noggin. Some of it, most of it is.
Aaron jumps. I assume he's talking about Craig Young. That spring game. All-American. Reminds me of C.J. Hicks. Last one we're going to get in here.
That's a good example.
That is.
I'm sorry, what did you say?
No, that is actually a very good example, Aaron. Last transfer we're going to talk about for this class here. Cremonte Hamilton, tight end from Tennessee. He was the 22nd overall recruit out of Tennessee that year. Another transfer.
Yeah, but this isn't also a guy that it would have been interesting to see what would have happened if he would have stayed at one position. I know they moved him to defensive end at Ohio State immediately.
Yes.
He played. I don't think he played at all his freshman year. 2020, he did play in 5 games. Remember, there were only 8, and he played a little bit. Like he had 3 tackles, and a sack. Like he played a few games. And in 2021, he played in 8 games. But I think most of those were blowouts. And then he transferred to Memphis, where he was not very good. Memphis, I believe, played him both defensive end and tight end. They were switching back and forth there too. That would have been interesting to see what would have happened if he would have. I don't know. I don't think he was athletic enough to play tight end. He
went to Memphis and he played defensive end. No, you're absolutely all over it. If you ask me, one of the, if not the diamond in the rough of the 2019 recruiting class, DeJuan Jones. You guys think back at DeJuan Jones, he was an absolutely Hulk of a football player. He ended up 3rd team All-American. He was a 2-time second-team All-Big Ten pick, and he was drafted in the 4th round with the 111th overall pick. DeJuan Jones, what a big freaking dude, right?
Yeah, man. There were a couple magazines that actually had specific snippets about DeJuan Jones, which is funny because he was the lowest rated recruit in Ohio State's class. He was noted as the sleeper in Lindy's. Off tackle DeJuan Jones from Indianapolis, Indiana, is the biggest project in the class, but has upside that rivals players at the top of the group. At 6'8", 360 pounds, with the athleticism to be a standout on the basketball court, his recruitment took off as he showed improvement as a senior. Yeah, this guy was kind of a late riser too. That's kind of a general theme with a lot of this too. Like he probably today he probably would be a 4-star. There are not many sleepers in this class, but Jones is a project the Buckeyes felt was worth taking a chance on. 6'8", 360 with rare feet for a kid his size. He improved immensely as a senior. His trajectory is headed upward. So yeah, he'd probably be a 4-star today. At any other school, he'd probably be one of the best offensive tackles in school history. So I think that's you got an All-American as a 3-star. That's very rare. That's going to be
absolutely
rare. Yeah, I mean he could probably still make an argument for top 25 offensive tackles in Ohio State history, top 50.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I definitely put him there. Doug jumped in our previous recruit. Hamilton rode a Greyhound bus to Ohio State camp to get his offer.
Really? That's interesting.
Yeah, that's
interesting. I know he was from Tennessee.
Yeah, Aaron jumps in. I thought Jones was a damn good player. I wouldn't argue. I'd say like Josh said, he was in that top 5 or top 25 echelon without question. He was a stud, and he was a hulk of a left tackle. He was a huge dude. One of the Bengals. Yeah, it
should be noted he played immediately. He played 9 games as a true freshman.
Yes,
and then he played in every game. No, wait, yeah, he played 9 games as a true freshman. Then he played in 6 games as a sophomore. The COVID season, there was only 8 games.
Yeah,
and then he started in 2021. He started every game at right tackle, and then he left. So that's another guy too. If he would have stayed,
yeah.
But he left with another year. That was a true junior too. It wasn't like Ronnie Hickman where he had a red shirt. But yeah, I mean, and that wasn't bashing him saying he was top 25 or top 50. It's just, this is Ohio State. You got guys like John Hicks, Orlando Pace, Mike Adams, Chris Ward, Mike Current, Jim Lachey. I mean, there's a lot of offensive tackles that were phenomenal here. And he was too. He's an All-American, but
No, won't argue that. I didn't get a graphic prepared, but last week we covered the 2020 class. We awarded that class 101 points. For the 2019 class, we are awarding them as a total 67 points. We're talking a 33-point drop off here.
So you got 67 points? I thought it was only 61. Did I miss something?
Oh, it was 61. No, you are right. 61. I have your Excel sheet. And mind you, to our Ohio State of Mind faithful in the chat, Josh sent me over this Excel sheet that he broke down all these players and entitled it Hot Singles in Your Area. And of course I opened it immediately.
Love it. Yeah, it should be noted though that CJ Stroud had 46 points. Right. So it's a huge drop off, but also the 2019 year, Ohio State got Justin Fields as a transfer.
There it is.
So it's like, this goes down as one of the worst classes in recent memory. And I don't know if that's fair. Does that make sense?
No.
Like, I feel like
it's unjust.
I feel like it's surpassed what everybody thought it was going to be. Everybody did anybody bust out? Was there any busts? Let's go back and look. Real quick, real quick summary. Back to the 2019 class. Harrison hit. Wilson hit. Miller played. He wasn't good, but he did play. Yeah. Right? Stover hit. Ronnie Hickman, I would class. He played. Jamison Williams, he played. Enoch Famahi, he played. He did play. Seal Chambers played. Bryson Shaw played. Tommy Eichenberg played. Ryan Jacoby is a bust. That guy's an outright bust. That guy didn't sniff the field. Noah Potter, that guy didn't sniff the fucking field. Those 2 guys are outright. And Marcus Crawley, he got hurt again, but making excuses. But but if we go back to 2020, I mean, Ryan Watts, that guy transferred out immediately. Mookie Cooper transferred immediately. Mitchell Melton didn't play. He was a reserve guy. Joe Royer transferred out immediately. Court Williams is always hurt. God bless. We won't put him as a bust because he was always hurt. If I did the same for Marcus Crowley, I can't do it for Court Williams. Cameron Martinez, didn't fucking play a snap. So there were a lot of guys. There were definitely more whiffs in the 2020 class. I don't know. I think it's just the 2020 class was definitely better because the guys who hit were all-time greats. C.J. Stroud, Jackson Smith and Jigma, Paris Johnson are some of the best Ohio State football players in the history of the university. But I don't think that the class is as bad as it was laid out to be.
No, I would agree with you. At the same time, you got to think about that 2019 to 2020. You were talking, 9 less recruits as well.
Yeah.
We're talking 9 less recruits. That was our breakdown of the 2019 recruiting class. Next week, we're going to come to you with the 2018 class. We're going to come to you with Buckeye news. We're going to take this live video, upload it to YouTube, see how that algorithm works. We're going to get some feedback from you guys as well on the channel. We appreciate it. We wouldn't mind knowing where you guys are located at, what time do you guys like to sit down and listen to some Buckeye, Ohio State of Mind podcast news and updates and recruit rewinds that we're calling it. Because we're going to have to do some finagling with the schedule here in the upcoming months, and we're going to figure that out and get it to you. But we did a pre-record last week, but we wanted to make sure we got you guys involved in the conversation. We appreciate you guys so damn much. Who was the defensive end that transferred to SMU and entered the portal again this year?
Amari Abor. He was a big 4-star from Dallas who went home and did not really see much playing time. Immediately put on social media that they weren't paying him what they promised and that their locker room sucked or something. I can't remember the whole drama behind that. But,
yeah, you're absolutely right.
He didn't really – I don't know if I'd be transferred. He didn't really do anything for SMU, so if he does transfer somewhere else, I would probably look to go to, Toledo. You know what I mean? Yeah. I don't know. But, yeah, the 2018 class is oh, dude, you're going to Zanesville? Oh, man, Russo's is pretty dope. Tom Ice Cream's Bowl is always in the newspaper. Yeah, man. Dude, there's that's awesome, Will. Maybe you should hit me up on Facebook, bro. Maybe I'll meet you out for a drink. But yeah, the 2018 class is going to be exciting too because that was the first year, I believe, of the early recruiting period, right? And guys could sign in December. Yes,
it was. You were all over it, my friend. We're going to be back. We're going to be back next week. We're going to be talking Buckeye news. We're going to talk the 2018 recruiting class. Guys in the chat, we appreciate you as always. We did the pre-record last week. We wanted to come back live, do some finagling because we didn't want to leave you guys out. You guys are, help make the show run, and we appreciate it. As always, I'm Chris, and you can find me at CRunning15. Josh?
Yeah, man. Follow me on X at Josh Keatley16. Real quick, before we do the math, before we get this going, what do you think the 2018 class will be better than the 2019 class?
I do I think we've got a higher potential because of the increased amount of recruits.
Just purely more guys.
I just think I'm going to go with just quantity over quality.
Interesting. You might be right. I'm fond of the 2019 class just because it got shit on so hard. I think that's my problem.
No, I mean, I can see that it's how it would stick in your craw. Will, thanks, guys. Will, thank you. Josh, I don't know if Will is a sports card guy like us, but you might have to give him a plug there. And you got a nice little one in Zanesville, yes?
Oh, yeah, dude. Kip's Cards in the Colony Square Mall is great. Also, Varsity Collectibles on the south side. It's in an old bank. Those dudes will hook you up. They always got great deals. It depends what you're looking for. If you're looking for old cards, go down to South Zanesville Varsity Collectibles. If you're looking for newer cards, Kip's Cards in the Colony Square Mall. Shout out to Isaac.
There it is. As always, I'm Chris. He's Josh. This is the Ohio State of Mind podcast. We will see each and every one of you next week. Thanks for jumping on, spending your time with us. And as always, go Bucks.